get back to the riots here.
Let's get back to the riots.
There's a good comment about you. This guy radiates the confidence of one who's been around.
Yeah.
That's Wild Bill.
So, some days I can even remember him.
Here's a question I don't know if you get too often. Can you remember April 28th, 1992? Now, you were telling me about this off air. Seriously, do you remember what the mood was like on the eve of the Rodney King verdict?
Well, I just told you a story. I was
You
in a
did.
police station the day before. I was downtown because some kids had stolen my Dodge Dart and rammed it into a police car. And so they asked me to come downtown in a not so polite way. And I got my city. And here's a little tip. If the police want you to come down and you didn't do anything wrong, call your city council person or some public official and get them to send a policeman with you, because otherwise you're in trouble. And yeah, no, to make a long story short, they kept. Well, what happened was they tried to steal my car, and I called, and they wouldn't pick up because that's L.A. Police Department. And so the next day, I finally called, and they said, "Okay, we can take your report now." And I gave them my license, and they go, "Hold on a minute," and then I get this like, uh, stolen cars. Like I'm like, yeah. It's like, yes, Mr. Cody. Yeah. So you want to report it stolen now? Hold on a second. And they get like police hit and run. I was like, they transferred me like 3 times, and then finally the guy goes, "You need to come down here." And I was like, oh. So anyway, so after being in the police station, having them ask me ridiculous questions, and I told you this part, I'm gonna like make it really quick,
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
but the guy that was with me, he kind of stepped back, and I was in this room downtown, and um, I think it must have been Parker Center back then. I don't know if the new police station was up. So it might have been Parker Center, which is about to be condos or is condos. And I finished up, but I got in a shouting match with somebody, and afterwards, the policeman who took me said, "Can I talk to you for a minute, Mr. Cody?" And I said, "Sure." And it's like, um, we did everything wrong. We made a lot of mistakes here, but in the future, if you're the only civilian in a room with 20 police officers, don't tell their captain to go fuck himself. And it's like, and he had a point. I was very
It's bad
lucky.
for your health.
It was a slant six. It wasn't. Uh, Somebody put slant six. They're also a good band. Um, the Dodge Dart, the slant six, because you could pull the slant six out and drop a bigger engine in.
Look at this guy. Look at this guy.
Yes, I am from White Trashville. Here's the thing. Where you grew up, where I did, right? During the holidays, right? This is the big thing, right? At some point, they go, "Hey, you want to go out and see Bob's rebuilt engine?" And when you're a young man growing up there, you don't say no because you don't want them thinking whatever about you, right?
Exactly.
So you all go out there, you all troop out there, about like 15 of you, to look at Bob's rebuilt engine. And then I would, I knew this, you're going to put glass packs on that. I had a couple of, things to say, that meant nothing to me. And then you just stand there like 15 dudes waiting until one's brave enough to go, "Whoa, it's getting pretty cold out here." You're thinking in your head, well, they probably don't think I'm, whatever they're thinking
Maybe that's
about.
how this show can really take off, Bill. Is
What's
if we
that?
just get you on here to talk about cars. If you have an old white man talking about cars, you've legitimized yourself for some reason.
uh,
And if we get you, see, someone said new header.
well, one thing I was thinking about is like, and 'cause I you're gonna ask me some questions. I think that's the best way to go. But what a lot of younger people don't understand is like every one of my friends had their car stolen at some point. Every one of my friends had their house burgled. I was mugged and robbed at knife point, and that wasn't like a big deal. Like everybody knew somebody like that. And the 80s, it was different than it is now. And I'm not sure all the reasons we were talking.
Mm.
Yes, there was a rise in drug use, but we have more drug use now than we did then. Some people, like I said, some people have done studies on the amount of lead paint that was around at that point and how awful it was for people and things like that. I don't know, but there definitely was a lot more crime. You could just go back and look at the statistics. The murder rates in New York, Los Angeles, everywhere were much higher
Yeah.
in the 80s and early 90s. And so there was a sense, people were scared of their neighbors sometimes. And, when I right before the riots happened, I lived in Echo Park, and people would stay at our house, and we lived up on the top of a hill, and you hear something, they go like, "Is that fireworks?" It's like, "Nah, that's gunfire." And they would always say the same thing. It's like, "Doesn't sound like in the movies." It's like, "No, it does
No,
not."
it does not. No, it does not.
But
Yeah, no.
that is gunfire.
Yeah,
And if
this
you
very different sound
if you lived in Echo Park, if you lived in Silver Lake, if you lived in all the quote unquote cool neighborhoods now,
now.
you were used to that. And that went all the way up to the 2000s. I remember because I did call my friend Bob Forrest, and
Mm.
I mean Bob Forrest was living with his girlfriend and oddly enough John Frusciante until he found out that uh he had $110,000 cash in a shoebox, and then he was able to move out. They used to live in Silver Lake by Mitchell Serena and Sunset, and you'd go to their house, and there was gunfire down there all the time. You know, it's just the
Jesus.
way it was,
Well,
and that was like 99, 2000.
um, yeah. We're gonna we're
He
gonna
was so mad when John found the 110 grand, and I said, "What are you mad for, Bob?" It's like you said you wanted him to move out. He goes like, "But not this way."
was it John Frusciante's money or did he take Bob's money?
No, it was John's money.
He just saved it in a shoebox.
John's okay. I'm sure he's not going to listen to this show, but he wouldn't. John, until he was 16 and a half, was a geek who played guitar in his bedroom.
Hmm.
And like 6 months later, he was a rock star. He doesn't have a lot of, he's never had to have a lot of social skills. So John's, you know, uh,
Special
he,
guy.
I like John, but he's not the most, if he didn't have money, he probably wouldn't make it for more than a couple of weeks.
Man.
So, well,
Well,
he'd probably have an assistant or a girlfriend or something. So he'd probably be fine.
sister or
Great guitar
girlfriend.
player though. That guy can fucking play
I'm
guitar.
looking for one of those things, an assistant slash girlfriend. So if anybody, maybe I should put a Craigslist ad out for
All right.
that.
So ask me
Maybe
some
that's way
questions
better than
about
dating apps. Just put an ad out.
ask me some questions about the riots.
When the when the verdict came in,
Hmm.
where were you and what were you thinking? And did you think it was going to be Watts all over again?
Oh yeah, we knew that.
Okay.
Um, well, what happened was okay, because this part I remember. Um, and this is the part, sometimes it's in some of these documentaries, but they really kind of don't talk about it for whatever
Mhm.
reason. But so, and we talked about this last week. I was texting you, but so when when the Korean grocer who shot Latasha Harlins and killed her,
Yeah.
was found guilty but given 0 days. The very same day up in Glendale, there was a UCLA student who happened to be Korean who had killed his dog. And the animal rights people were out in droves in Glendale and got the judge to give that kid something like 5 or 6 years, right?
Hmm.
So there was a big meeting at the A&E church, the AME church, right?
Mhm.
Like all these people were down there, and they stood in front of the cameras and said, here's the deal. We'll put up with this today, but if those 4 cops don't go down, we're going to burn this city. So we all knew what was going to happen. And here's the difference between the 60s riots in Watts and this one. And I if you look at the pictures, right,
Mhm.
you'll see that the fires aren't the whole block. They're like at the end of the block. They nailed every thrifty drug, they nailed every Korean grocer, right?
Mhm.
And you could look out and see it. Like you see the pictures of the Watts riots, um, you see like the whole street is burned.
Mhm.
They weren't going to do that this time, right? And when I say they, there was definitely an organization. Some people said it was the gangs. I mean, I wasn't involved in that part of it, but there was definitely people within the African American community, the South Central community, who were like, we're not putting up with this shit, and had planned. And so the city all knew, right?
Mhm.
And what happened was they announced that the verdict had come down. And they held the verdict for, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours. The verdict came down in the morning, but they didn't announce it till like pretty late afternoon, right?
Mhm.
So everybody in the city was like, yikes, yikes, yikes. And that's the thing is like because I went back and I watched a couple of those documentaries last week, and the Reginald Denny who got beaten up quite badly, he was from Seattle, right?
He's a trucker.
Yeah, he was a trucker. And then you had the Mexican American couple, right, who didn't speak English, right?
Mhm.
None of my friends were going to be down at fucking Normandy and Florence that day. No, nobody that lived in the city that was paying attention was going to be down there. Everybody was at home, right? People went home early. And I was living in Echo Park at the top of the hill, which I was just telling you.
Mhm.
My roommate, who's still a good friend, John, he's an editor for big films, and I think he's working at 20th Century, maybe.
Mhm.
Um, I'm almost positive he's working on uh, Dracula, the Coppola Dracula, if I'm not mistaken. But it might have been something else. He was like an assistant editor back when you actually cut. Anyway, he was stuck on the other side, so he went to his girlfriend's house, and I was at the top of this hill, and I'll tell you the first thing, I had just recently gotten clean and sober,
Mhm.
and so I was an angry little ball of hate because it's like whatever. But I'm stuck at the top of the house, and John's like, I'm not crossing the city, right?
Mhm.
And what happened was the two original flashpoints were down by Florence.
Mhm.
And the other one that no one ever talks about is they also set fire to a bunch of shit around City Hall and around the police station.
That's where the protest was.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
what happened was the police, so Daryl Gates pulled all the police in, right? And there were some out on the street at the beginning, but then basically they pulled all the police in, but they did block off certain neighborhoods. So they blocked off all around Echo Park down on Sunset. So I couldn't leave my little neighborhood if I wanted to because they wouldn't let me out. But I could look down the hill and I could see they had set fire to everything along the 101, and they had set fire to a bunch of stuff like downtown. But by the evening, all of the thrifty drugs were on fire. All of the Korean grocery stores were on fire. And I was up on a hill, and you could look out and you could see, and you can see pictures if you look it up on YouTube. You'll see pictures of people like up on hills, and you could see all the way down to the harbor, right? And then the television's on and they're going nuts and everything. And then the other thing that people don't remember is um, this is before cell phones. So the phones didn't work. The phones were overloaded right away.
Mhm.
So you couldn't call anybody, right? Like for about 30 minutes you could call people. And then after that, you couldn't call your friends, you couldn't call your, family in St. Louis. You couldn't call anybody.
Wow.
So all you had was your television and you could look out and see everything burning. And so that was the first night. The second day was when all the looters came out. And the looters looked different than the people who were burning shit, right?
Mhm.
And I told you this, there was a study and I couldn't find it. I tried to find it online. They estimated that the second day, some ridiculous amount of the fires that were started were started by the business owners to get
Insurance.
insurance.
Yeah.
Um, but you had all this looting. Now, the meat puppets were supposed to come up and stay at my house
Mhm.
that night. And they got through right away and they were like, what the hell's going on up there? And I said, well, I don't think you're going to be able to come to the house, right? So they were supposed to play the next day at the Roxy. And that got canceled. And the looting was going across the city and they brought the National Guard out. And I told you this. This is no doubt. This is exactly how it happened because a lot of people were listening on like public radio had kind of the best thing to listen to, right? They had some people out in the streets by that time, and you know they had moved all the way across mid Wilshire, and then suddenly the looters reached the Beverly Center, which is the edge of Beverly Hills, and the troops just came flooding out. like like
You are not
suddenly there
tearing up the nice mall.
suddenly there were National Guard troops everywhere.
You
It's
better go
like
to Fox Hills Mall with that shit.
you are not coming into Beverly Hills. This is not happening,
Yeah.
right? And so what I did, and this is I hightailed it over the valley because the Meat Puppets were playing in Santa Barbara the following night, and I figured I'd just meet up with them there. And I went and saw the Meat Puppets in Santa Barbara. They had, if I remember right, 51 people attended that show because all the kids in Santa Barbara were stuck. They're all a lot of them from Los Angeles, so they were all watching the riots on television. And out of the 51, I think it was like me, um, two of their girlfriends, and Jason Priestley, who was the hot ticket at the time, who loved them, and like 7 supermodels. And they played a version of Three Birds that went on for 35 minutes. So, everything's going to be all right with a monster guitar solo and a lot of feedback. And then afterwards, they were like, 51? We haven't had 51 since we were in high school.